So guys, you might remember this one time where I made a video about mini Christmas tree custom block proc rate and used some statistical analysis to basically disprove the fact that they were working correctly, and the result was that they got fixed. And so recently I have had a similar issue with fatty masks. In reality, this issue has been present for months, if not years. Um, and it's been reported numerous times, and I submitted yet another report today, and this is what Eldrem says: to the extent the code doesn't lie, he claims it's 50%. So if you guys remember, I ran a statistical analysis. I'm gonna essentially do the same thing here. So I'm going into a duel with a full inventory of pets, and I'm gonna have a second account wear a fatty mask. We're gonna get some data collected, and we're gonna do some statistical analysis. Alright, so as you can see, I currently have 20 pets in my inventory, and all are leashed. 20 just so it can be a nice round number. So I'll run 5 or 10 trials, we'll see how far I get before I get bored. But basically, I'm just collecting a bunch of data. I'm going to go into duels. My main is going to be wearing my fatty mask. My ult is going to have all of these leashed pets. And we'll see in chat after each duel how many pets get negated, the pet leash gets negated by the fatty mask. So after going through and viewing all of the data, this on the screen is what it comes out to be. So you can see every single trial had more than half of the pet leashes negated. Trial 7 had all the way up to 19, but what's more important is at the bottom, you can see out of the 200 total leashed pets, exactly 150 were negated, which is exactly 75%. So from here on out, the video is going to be fairly similar to the one that I made on the mini Christmas trees, but I'm just going to summarize what the statistical analysis aims to look at. And so in this case, we're essentially saying if we went onto a server that had a fatty mask proc rate of 50%, and we tested the same amount that I did in the clips, what are the chances that the results that you just saw would occur? In other words, if the chance were truly 50% and we did those 200 trials, what is the probability that we would see the results that we saw? And that can essentially tell us whether the proc rate is truly 50%. So as is the theme, I'll be using the same formula that I used in the original mini Christmas tree video. And to essentially explain what this means, the z-score is a measure of how far from the average we are in terms of standard deviations, and p hat is the probability that we saw in the sample. P naught is the expected probability, which would be the 50%, and then n is the total number of trials. So I'm basically just going to plug in the numbers, show you the calculations, and then interpret the results in context. So I went ahead and plugged in values into the equation that I showed on the previous slide, and you can see that when I solve, z is equal to 7.07. And essentially, z is a measure of the number of standard deviations away from the mean that a data point is. So this is saying if you were taking 200 samples from a population that had a 50% proc rate, then this data sample, or this sample as a whole, would be 7.07 standard deviations away from the mean. So here is a visualization of the standard normal distribution, also known as the bell curve, and this can apply to pretty much any situation in which it is a proc-based thing or something that occurs at a certain percent chance. And so as you can see at the bottom, that z-score line, in this visual it goes from -3 to +3, -3 to +3, and as you can see by those tiny percentages in those smaller fragments as you get closer to those extremes, you can see that even at z equals 3 or z equals -3, the percent chance is already incredibly small, down to 0.1%, which is 1 in 1,000. But as you know, and as you can see based on this exponential trend, by the time we get to +7, it is going to be an incredibly small number. So I'll go ahead and calculate that value, and then I'll explain why it proves that the fatty mass proc rate cannot be 50%. So this is a z-score table, which is a point of reference for determining the probability of a certain z-score occurring. And so as we know, our z-score was 7.07, but as you can see based on the rows and columns of this chart, it only goes up to 3.99, and it is already essentially saying that that is a probability of 1 of it being less than that z-score, and a probability of essentially 0 of it being greater. So I had to go to my calculator and do a normal probability distribution function, and when I input the values, it gave me a value of 5.58 times 10 to the -12. So when I take that value and convert it into a probability, it gives me, wait for it, a 1 in 179 billion chance that the fatty mask has a proc rate of 50% given the current data. So as I play some various entertaining screenshots and clips, I just want to wrap this up by basically addressing the situation not just in this one bug report, but just overall. I mean, if I'm being totally transparent, it's a really terrible job on the part of the staff. I mean, pretty much just the admins, but I mean, there's been so many bugs just in the past few weeks since the Dark Rift update, and I mean, some things they address, and some things they address after a very long time, and then there are things that are just known issues that have been known for weeks, months. In this case, people have been claiming this for a very long time, and it's been very obvious. But for whatever reason, they really just don't care. So, I mean, it is what it is. I'm hoping that this video, like the Christmas tree one, can just bring some attention to it, whether it's through the ironic, satirical sense of this video or through the actual statistics, which, by the way, are 100% accurate. Someone who has statistics knowledge can back me up on that. At the end of the day, like, if they're gonna be just ignorant about it, they're not gonna fix it anyway. But I'm just really hoping that, you know, over time people will decide that they need to be held accountable. And, I mean, there's not much else I can say at this point. Like, you guys have seen the evidence for yourself. If you have played the server and if you've PvP'd, you already knew that the fatty mask had a higher proc rate than 50%. And in fact, I can tell you, based on the data, it is very, very likely to just be 75%, which was the old fatty mask proc rate. And I was hoping by saying this, you know, this Discord ticket that I submitted, that they would take a look into that, but apparently the code doesn't lie. So I guess the 1 in 179 billion chance doesn't lie either, but what can you do? So, that's the video. Let me know if you have any questions, any comments, any, you know, shared sympathies, but other than that, that's all from me.